Happy Friday. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, they're going to get not one, but two chances this weekend to get back in the win column. Heck, hopefully they will be able to sweep this back-to-back. Both games are at PPG Paints Arena. For today's episode, we're going to preview Saturday's matinee. It's that massive game against the Washington Capitals because there's a lot of implications standings-wise. And we're also going to preview the game on Sunday against the Nashville Predators, and what the Penguins need to do to make sure that they get back in the win column, and also provide some, lack of injury updates. There's not really much, but who could be back in the lineup tomorrow. I'm going to touch on that for this episode as well. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And, of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. I'm rocking my beautiful Highway to Hell AC/DC shirt because, right now the Penguins are on a highway to hell with how they've been playing. But, again, as I said in my opening, two massive games this weekend. The Gauntlet Part 2 continues for the Penguins. Saturday, 3 o'clock start time on ESPN ABC. As this is a nationally televised game against the Washington Capitals, this will be the fourth and final regular season meeting between the two. Highly doubt they'll see each other in the playoffs. This actually, I shouldn't say this, probably will be the last time they see each other until next season. So the Penguins, they got to win this game, especially, with standings wise, the Caps are only 6 points behind them with 2 games in hand. And even after Sunday, Washington also plays Boston. If Pittsburgh's able to win those 2 games in regulation and Washington loses both games, Pittsburgh will be 10 games up, 10 points up on Washington. Even though the Caps will have 2 games in hand, it would still be a very tall task for them to pass the Penguins at this point. And the Penguins will also be that much closer to clinching a playoff spot if the Penguins do win both these games and the Islanders drop Saturday's game against the St. Louis Blues. The Penguins, all they have to do next week, win one of the 2 games against the Islanders, and they are in to the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's all they gotta do. They're very close. It's all a matter of just putting the finishing touches on the the Penguins are basically in, but for some reason I get very nervous about this kind of stuff. Some Mets level collapse or something, even though I don't think it's going to happen. It's still. It lingers in the back of my mind. And once they get in, I don't really care what they do regular season wise. I'm sure they're probably still just going to play the Rangers in the first round at least. But I want to get into the dance first. Penguins magic number remains at 7. If they win tomorrow, it goes down to 5, and an Islanders loss to the Blues, it goes down to 3. Penguins win on Sunday as well, it goes down to 1. So they would basically just need a point, or at least 1 out of 4 points basically next week against the Islanders, or just 1 point in the remaining 8 games, and they're in the playoffs. Or heck, even 1 win will also do it, or an Islanders loss. So there's all the playoffs scenarios out there for the Penguins. Now, as for any injury updates, there wasn't really too much today from Mike Sullivan, but there's 4 players that have a chance to come back tomorrow. Sidney Crosby, John Marino, both from illnesses. Remember, the players that were sick last time, Evgeny Malkin, remember, he missed that game against the Rangers where they got blew out. He came back just a couple of days later on Saturday against the Detroit Red Wings. Actually, no, not Saturday. I believe that was a Sunday against the Red Wings, excuse me. So hopefully the illness has just exited both Sid and John Marino's systems. They're going to need both of those players if they want to take down Washington on Saturday. And could we also see the return of Jason Zucker and Brock McGinn? Brock is actually eligible to come off of LTIR on Saturday. It's the first day he's eligible. I'm sure they probably skated back in Pittsburgh on their own on Friday. Maybe they'll get a session in before the game on Saturday. Who knows? We will find out more from Mike Sullivan when he speaks to the media. That's usually 2 hours before puck drops. So if I'm getting this right, usually probably 1, maybe 1:30 at the latest, and we'll get the statuses of both Zucker and McGinn, because he did say going into the Rangers game that they were closer to coming back. And with McGinn eligible to come off of LTIR on Saturday, with Zucker already skating, had a full practice, took full contact. I'm hoping that this is the game that maybe we can see a healthy Penguins lineup for the first time this year. It would take until the 71st game to actually see it happen, but there's a chance that we may see it this weekend. So, getting all four of these players back, it's so massive. Obviously, Sid is Sid. He does his thing. He's having one of his greatest seasons ever. John Marino, he's always a good presence still on the back end. His zone exits per 60, among the league's best among defensemen. Jason Zucker, a forechecking prowess next to Evgeny Malkin and Ricard Raquel. Both of those players need Jason back in the worst way. Just against Minnesota, he already made a difference, and he only played for a period and a half before he got taken out by Kevin Fiala. Then for McGinn, I know people are down on him because of his term, but he still has had a good offensive punch this year, and hopefully he can bring some depth scoring back for this team because they badly need it right now. When they went down 2-0 to the Rangers going into the third, I really had no confidence that they would come back, and normally that's not the case for me because the Penguins have come back from multiple goal deficits numerous times in the Mike Sullivan era. But with how the offense was humming through two periods, and without Sid and Zucker, and how the bottom three lines were not producing anything, heck, even Evgeny Malkin I thought was a bit off. I just really had no confidence in the Penguins to do anything. And sure enough, they really didn't come close to scoring in that third period. Even the power plays that they got in that period were just very congested. They didn't really get any chances on them. The puck movement was not good. You can just really see how much Sid means to the lineup when he is out. Not that everyone knew that he would mean so much when he's out of the lineup, but even against a team as good as the New York Rangers, his absence is definitely felt. So crossing our fingers that he's back. John Marino, Jason Zucker, and I should say Brock McGinn are back as well. And and as for the Penguins getting back on track, they just got to get back to playing Mike Sullivan's system. I haven't really been seeing them forecheck pretty aggressively these last couple of games. I thought last Saturday against Colorado they were the better team. They just weren't rewarded for it. Tuesday they were fine. Just Tristan Jarry I think let up a couple of goals that he probably should have had back. And then yesterday just a couple really unacceptable breakdowns that started actually, in the Rangers defensive zone. The cross ice passes, which are not usually there. When you see Mike Sullivan's system going full speed, a player will be aggressively forechecking that player in whoever's defensive zone. And the fact that they were kind of just gliding back and just gliding to the player, I think it was Adam Fox one of the times, he's able to put the cross ice pass right where it needs to be. The Rangers are off the other way. There's a couple players well behind the play, and the Penguins, they're discombobulated. Brian Dumoulin, he really needs to have a good game this weekend. I'm going to have my eyes on him a lot. I read Jesse Marshall's piece from The Athletic, speaking about, should the Penguins make a change at the top pairing, and, the numbers are ugly. I appreciate everything for what Brian Dumoulin has done for this team, but he's not helping offensively. And when he's a detriment defensively, which is usually what he's known for, he's not really bringing a lot to the lineup. And I don't know who they should stick up there. They tried Matheson a few times, and I think that kind of sent a message from Mike Sullivan that they're really not thrilled with his play. I mean, Mike really hasn't been saying much about Dumoulin at all, other than his compete level or maybe intangibles and stuff. Usually when Mike is saying that kind of stuff, he really has nothing positive to say. That's just kind of his way of saying, yeah, we kind of need more from him at this point. So he's definitely a player that I'm going to have a lot of eyes on tomorrow. And, just overall, I think the whole back end too, is Marcus Pettersson. Is he going to come out of the lineup and have more? And if John Marino is healthy, that is Mark Friedman going to replace Pettersson again? Because, that's one of the main roster, spots that a couple players are fighting for right now, is really that number 6 defense spot. I mean, you're not taking Chris Letang out. For as much as, I think Brian Dumoulin could use a few nights off, I don't think Mike Sullivan is going to do that. Mike Matheson should not even come close to coming out of the lineup. I think Marino's been fine. Chad Riedel's been good and steady. It's mainly just down to Pettersson and Friedman at this point. And, Friedman, for as much chaos he brings, he's a pretty good offensive defenseman. He can also defend his own blue line very well as well. So curious to see what Mike Sullivan does with the lines tomorrow. There was no Philip Hollander back to Wilkes-Barre move today, so I guess they're probably still being cautious. If Sid and Marino are good to play tomorrow, just maybe look for that kind of move sometime Saturday morning, maybe Saturday afternoon, or something like that. But yeah, just better defensively. Tristan Jarry just has to keep doing his thing and playing solid in goal. And I just want to see the Penguins actually look like they give a shit out there. And I apologize for cussing. I don't usually do that on this show, but the lack of compete level from what I saw on Thursday night was kind of startling. What they said to the media after the game was it was kind of weird, right? Like, well, we got some good chances. It was a close game. They got a couple of good looks. They buried them, and we weren't able to bury ours. And it's like, okay, Mike, I get it. You're being a lot more positive than I figured he would be, because he's usually pretty pissed off when the team starts losing games. I don't know if that's due to him thinking this is going to turn around right away, or that he really believes in this group or whatnot. But it's definitely a little bit startling that they just there's really not a lot of emotion, I think, in that locker room right now. I guess they know that their playoff spot is almost secure. They're 17 points up on the Islanders. The Islanders only have 12 games remaining, one of which comes tomorrow against St. Louis Blues. They have 2 against the Penguins next week. It's a home and home. The Penguins, they gotta win at least one of those games, to say the least. So I don't know. What I do know is that it was really weird to read some of those responses after the game, because I think the world of Sully, of course, but I just didn't, his responses were really odd. I figured he would show a lot more bite to the media about how the team is playing, but who knows? Maybe the team does come out tomorrow and makes a statement and blows the Capitals out. It probably won't be a blowout, but I am hoping that the Penguins are able to win this game, because the last 2 games against Washington, the Penguins have played pretty well, to say the least, even though they've won one and then got a point in the other. They lost in overtime to Dmitry Orlov goal. But coming up in that next segment, we are going to preview that game against Washington, look at some of their lines, look at how they've been playing, and all that jazz. But before we get to that, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. Almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They are marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors: yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They are all so good. They're also going to probably be your new favorite flavor. Also, all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, Puffs are included with those. You can go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You will be blown away by what you see. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. You can go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Now, let's get back to our friends at Mattress Factory. When prompted, art is a sport, which we ran about a couple of weeks ago. Joey Yin says, what if you're already a season ticket holder? Mattress Factory ended up sending out in a response to us, says, you probably have better seats than this group of reserved tickets, and you can share our post with your hockey buddies, so you can do both together. Also, that didn't answer the question, so we're going to assume that you agree that art is a sport. Remember, all of this comes from Mattress Factory, Pittsburgh's premier site-specific art installations museum. That's just a fancy way of saying actually immersive art. So you can visit mattress.org/GoPens to get a free 1-year membership to Mattress Factory when you buy tickets for the Penguins Bruins game on April 21st. That is a little less than 2 weeks away at this point. So remember, mattress.org/GoPens to get a free 1-year membership to Mattress Factory when you buy tickets to the Penguins hosting the Bruins on April 21st. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, of course, the Penguins, they will be, it's a big rivalry game, another one, of course, and the Washington Capitals will come to town for the 4th and final time. Well, the 2nd and final time, but it's the 4th and final meeting of the regular season. It looks like Connor Sherry might not be available. Former Penguin, of course. He also is a Penguin killer over the years. Has 6 or 7 goals against them in his career. That's combined with both being in Buffalo and Washington. At least Daniel Sprong was also not there. He's also scored a couple of goals against the Penguins for his career. He actually scored, I believe it was the tying goal against Pittsburgh that it sent that game to overtime. in the last matchup before Dmitry Orlov scored the winner. Top six wise, Alex Ovechkin is still doing his thing. He's the greatest goal scorer in the history of this league. It is truly incredible what he does on an everyday basis at this point. I know Penguins fans are supposed to hate him, but at this point, I'm of the opinion that I think both fan bases need to stop. They need to stop hating the opposing franchise player. That goes for obviously Washington fans as well, but I don't think they're ever going to let that go. They'll just continue to hate on Sidney Crosby, even though he's also one of the greatest players of all time. Too, Sid is also closing in on the 1,400 point milestone. Ovechkin just hit that the other day. He's also third all time now on the NHL's goal scoring list. He's definitely gonna finish at least number 2 all time. And I'm definitely hoping that he passes Wayne's record. I'll say that even if I cover a rival team, I still want that to happen because it's league history right there. Evgeny Kuznetsov, he's having a good year. I don't know why Garnett Hathaway is on that top line. I think that just makes part of it a little irrelevant. But it's definitely a curious call, I think, from Peter Laviolette. Anthony Mantha, Nick Backstrom, and Tom Wilson on the second line. That's a very good second line. Marcus Johansson, they acquired from Seattle. He really has not done anything since coming back from the lineup. Now watch him actually score against the Penguins on Saturday. I'm just going to knock on my table right now. McMichael is their third line center. He is actually one of their pretty good young players that they recalled from Hershey. And he was a steal at the draft at the time, and he has some of the best underlying numbers on the team. So it's been kind of weird to see Peter Laviolette just continually scratch him. Obviously, he is back in the lineup now. But this should be a player that's in the lineup on an every night basis at this point. He's a good, player with the puck. His playmaking ability is pretty strong. He has a nice shot. Defensively, I think he's fine too. And, I know he's playing on a line with Marcus Johansson, who's not that good, but still TJ Oshie, for as much as I like to harp on him, and I know a lot of the Penguins fans like to harp on him too. He's still humming along pretty good. His contract is going to be pretty bad, I am sure, for the next 2 years, though this year I really can't say that because he's still producing when he's been in the lineup. That contract's actually aging like fine wine right now. At the time, it looked like it was going to age like milk. I think that's the John Carlson one potentially right now, even though he did have a good game against Tampa Bay the other night. And speaking of that Washington Bay game, Washington won that game 4-2. No, not 4-2. I believe it was 3-2. And Washington, they almost gave that game away in the final few minutes. Tampa Bay was very close to tying that game, but the Lightning have been really struggling lately. So, but that was a big win for Washington. They had been reeling a little bit. I think it was basically like a 2-4-2 stretch after going 7-0-1. This has been a very up and down season for Washington. They started out really hot. It looked like, they might be a kept contender. Then they had their January, February layoff where they just weren't playing well. Then they had that big stretch in March where they won almost all their games. Then after that, they've just been in another little bit of a lull. I still think of the 8 teams in the playoffs, they're the one that doesn't scare me the most. But also, as long as they have Alex Ovechkin, TJ Oshie, Nick Backstrom, Tom Wilson, they're a threat to win a series, even with their shaky goaltending, which I am going to get to in just a second. Fourth line, Lars Eller, who used to be a mainstay in the top 9. He's been relegated down there. Johan Larsson, very underrated defensive player. He doesn't really bring a lot of offense. He's kind of like a mini Zach Aston-Reese in a way, but he's usually a pain in the butt to play against. Defensively, John Carlson still mans that number 1 spot with Martin Feherty, Nick Jensen with Dmitry Orlov, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, and old friend Justin Schultz. And then in goal, I'm not sure which goaltender is going to start, Vitek Vanacek or Ilya Samsonov. Last game, it was Vanacek that started against the Penguins. He ended up getting hurt. Samsonov came in and then played the game of his life. I'm pretty sure he had about 5 or 6 high danger saves. I don't know how the Penguins did not win that game in regulation, to say the least. So I'm not really sure. My guess is that it would be Samsonov, but that's a 50-50, I think, for me at this point. But, I don't really care what Washington's record is. These are still, it's a high stakes rivalry game. Anything can happen. I don't care how bad the Capitals have been playing lately, even though they won on Wednesday against Tampa Bay. This is a good Capitals team. And I know the Penguins have outplayed them in 2 of the 3 games this year. I want to see if that can continue on Saturday because I do think the Penguins are a lot faster than the Capitals. But, Washington still has a lot of very good players that can score well. Obviously, Ovechkin and, their power, Ovechkin, Oshie, Wilson, even Nick Backstrom, who's having kind of a down year. His production is not where it once was, and his underlying numbers have also cratered, to say the least. I think it's just his hip injury is just starting to catch up with him, and that's a shame because I actually really enjoy watching him. He's such a great passer when he's on top of his game. But this is a must-win for the Penguins. They win this game in regulation. They're 8 points up on the Capitals, and that basically almost ends Washington's hopes of catching them. I'm cautious with saying that. It would be very hard, I think, for Washington to catch them if Pittsburgh wins that game before overtime. So it's a big one here. Curious to see how the Penguins play it. And let's see how those first 5 minutes go. Let's see who's in the lineup. If they can come out and really establish an identity, both offensively and defensively, I think it could be a long day for the Capitals. But I'm excited to see this one play out. That's for sure. Coming up in the next segment, we're then going to preview the game on Sunday against the Nashville Predators. But before I get to that, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and all that jazz. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, second half of back-to-back, 4 o'clock start on Sunday. That'll be on TNT for those that are unaware. So, both these games this weekend, nationally televised games. You're going to see a lot of that down the stretch here for the Penguins. I think all the networks just wanted them to. I don't know, for some reason they wanted them to just have the Penguins be on TV the last few weeks, but you know what, whatever. But Penguins, they lost in Nashville about a few weeks ago. That was a 4-1 loss. Juuse Saros was really good. That was the main difference in the game for me. I thought the Penguins outplayed the Predators pretty good. DeSmith probably had a couple of goals he should have wanted back, but the Penguins dictated the pace of that game. I remember doing a recap episode, and I wasn't really concerned going into that game against St. Louis. And, I was finally right about something, and the Penguins just bullied the Blues off the ice in St. Louis. They wanted a shootout, of course. But, that was a game that, Billy Husso almost stole for himself. But, Nashville, I know it all starts in net with Juuse Saros. He's having another incredible season. He's potentially going to be a Vezina Trophy finalist at the end. He's one of the biggest reasons they are in a playoff spot this year. But the biggest reason, it's not any of their forwards. It's Roman frickin' Josi. And, he actually could start to get some Hart Trophy love, I should say. What he is doing this year is nothing short of remarkable. 87 points in 68 games. We might actually have a defenseman hit 100 points in the NHL this year. Even with only 10 to 12 games left, it would not surprise me. And the fact that I can't even remember when the last time that happened, it just, that staggers me. I believe the last defenseman to average at least a point per game for a full season, 82, was Erik Karlsson back in, I believe it was 2015-16. What we are seeing right now is better than what Karlsson did. Josi is playing like the best defenseman in hockey. You'd be hard pressed to vote against him for the Norris. I think at this point, I know Makar's been great. I know Fox has been awesome. Victor Hedman, Chris Letang, all these other names. But, for me, it's Josi and everyone else. He drives the Predators offense from the back end. He's also great in his own zone. To see how far he's come, he's always been a great defenseman, but to finally see him as a true elite, number one, arguably the best defenseman in the league at this point, it's crazy. I can't say enough about how good he's been, and the Penguins are going to have to be on high alert for him in this game. Philip Forsberg on the top line with Ryan Johansson. Forsberg has been averaging a point per game this year. He's been very good. Mikael Granlund with Matt Duchene on the second line with Tolvanen. They have a pretty decent top six. Colton Sissons on the third line. Nick Cousins on the fourth. Their bottom six is really not that good. They have a couple of players that, I really don't know who they are. I think at this point, but defensively, Matthias Ekholm, Roman Josi, Jeremy Lauzon, Mark Borowiecki, Fabro. I don't love their back end outside of Ekholm and Josi, but those two are the main reasons why that back end I think is at least average. At this point, they've been carried by their elite scoring, by their best players here, and that's why they are on track to make these Stanley Cup playoffs. Usually Nashville is not known for being a fast team, so I think the Penguins' speed could give them some problems. I'm curious to see how this matchup goes because, again, I thought the Penguins were the better team. In Nashville, they were outskating them to every puck. The difference was just Juuse Saros, and I'm sure he's probably going to get the start in this one. And, we'll have to see if the Penguins are able to get that win and see how gassed they are, because that will be their third game in basically 2.5 days. At this point, not third game, not 2.5, third game, I think, in 3.5 days at this point. But, big opportunity here for the Penguins. They have to at least win one of these 2 games. Prefer to win 2 of them to get that magic number down to 3 at the most, potentially 1, and going into next week's games against 2 against the Islanders and then 1 against the Boston Bruins on the road. So that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I'm back on Monday to recap both of these games for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Please, God, let's see if they can get a win. I am so tired of reading all the takes on social media. And I'm kind of getting sick and tired of the way they've been playing, especially these last couple of games. So let's see if they can see if someone can light a fire under them. I think at this point, that's the best way to say it. But again, thank you all so much for listening. Follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @LO_Penguins. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do that. We are almost to 200 subscribers. I believe we're about 30 away from this point before. My next goal will be about 300. And then, the podcast, of course, follow it on Apple and Spotify. So I will talk to you all on Monday. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend.